Well, the long nightmare of sorts that has been the 2019 Steelers season is over. It's finally over. And I'll honestly say this, and it's actually agreeing with a colleague of mine, Jeff Hawthorne, the sports director at 93.7 The Fan, who I got to know some during some work I've done with The Fan in Pittsburgh, that while I feel very, very lucky and I am fortunate to be able to say I've covered an NFL team, to cover the Pittsburgh Steelers of all NFL teams, and to now have done it for multiple platforms for an extended period of time, for several years, every cool aspect that is, even though it's a lot more work than many of you may think, from my time with the Trib to now with Pittsburgh Sports Now, Steelers Now, Pittsburgh Sports Live. And that's just a small segment of my entire media career, but this has been a large chunk that has checked off a lot from my bucket list that I aspired to achieve when I was a young kid hoping for a career in media. That while all of that is true, and it's especially true because I'm covering the Steelers, and that was a team that I gave up the fan card now while I'm covering, but I grew up rooting for the Steelers. My dad was a Steeler fan, family was a Steeler fan, so that makes it even more special, but it would be the same with any NFL team. But this is the first time that I can honestly say I'm thrilled to death the Steelers aren't in the playoffs, and I'm thrilled to death this NFL season is over. Forget the grind of the work that happens every year, and I know all the drama of the past seasons as I embarked on this endeavor in terms of covering the Steelers. But this one was just an ugly year. I mean, the Steelers went through every obstacle imaginable. It was roller coaster ride to say the least, and of course it ends once again missing the playoffs. Regardless, though, I'm a little bit relieved, I guess you could say. But while I'm relieved for that, that's not the purpose of this show here. And as this is another edition of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, and of course SteelersNow.com, I am your host, Mike Asti. And this one, it's not going to be about me being happy the Steelers season's over, because I am, but that's kind of now put to bed, so that's the issue. And I didn't really feel like going to, Foxborough for the Steelers to go ahead and lose to New England for the umpteenth time in the playoffs either, which would have been the result if they got the win because of the result in the Tennessee-Houston game. But there are many of you now taking this opportunity to yell out from the rooftops like you do every year, but it's odd to do it this year, about how Mike Tomlin should be fired, how you're done with Mike Tomlin, and fire Mike Tomlin. You're blaming it all on him. I even hear people saying no excuses. They're blaming Mike Tomlin and saying there are no excuses for this Steelers season being a missed playoff opportunity. Guys, while I am somebody who would love to be negative if I could, not to say I'm going to harp on the negative when it's there, but basically I keep it real. So if there's negative out there, I'm not going to shield somebody. I'm not going to avoid it. I'm not going to be scared to say it. I'm going to keep it real and just say what the truth is of the scenario. Okay? End of last year, who had defended Tomlin for years and said that he's actually been underrated by Steeler fans. He does have a great legacy. He is a Hall of Famer. He's not Belichick, but he's wildly successful. And the numbers show that. I mean, you look here, Tomlin has led Pittsburgh to 125, 66, and 1 record during his tenure, only surpassed by Bill Belichick in New England. That's how amazing that is. It's a .654 win percentage, and yes, I looked that up, but I already knew how great he's been, at least under the Belichick umbrella, during this last decade. Plus, of course, having won one Super Bowl, having been to 2 division title, playoff appearances, granted not the last 2 years, and always at least at or above 500, no losing record, so that's a big deal too. Nonetheless, last year I went out there on the post-game show, wrapped up the season similar. They're sitting down there, last game of the season. That one was at Heinz Field where they're kneeling down and they needed help to get into the playoffs despite all the drama and everything that went on. Didn't happen. They didn't make it. But that was an underachieving team. AB was there. Juju was there. Juju was having an all-pro year, unlike this season. AB was there playing well up until skipping out week 17. Bell wasn't there, but Connor played most of the year, unlike this year, missing about half the season. Last year, getting over 900 yards on the ground. The defense was much better this year, but last year was still adequate and better than the year before. That team underachieved with talent. Like teams recently, despite Tomlin's success, he has underachieved with an immense amount of talent. You could maybe say only 1 championship and 2 appearances with all that talent, and none once the triple Bs of Bell, Brown, and Ben, all 3 got together in starting positions, that might be a disappointment. Okay. But I said last year that they're never going to fire Mike Tomlin because that's just not what the Roonies do. They don't fire head coaches. They have never fired a head coach. They let Cowher hang around for years and missing the playoffs, losing all those AFC Championship games, and some of those were upsets. They let Chuck Noll hang around for a decade plus after winning those 4 championships when they only got in the playoffs once in the 80s and were just completely mediocre. I got all that. So I said they weren't going to fire Mike Tomlin, but maybe it was time to kind of part ways. It's a new NFL now, new media era, new social media is different than with those coaches and the fan base. Maybe just part ways where, okay, you're not going to have Mike Tomlin be fired. You don't want to do that to a Hall of Famer. You want to put him in the Ring of Honor someday. The Steelers Hall of Honor, I'm sorry. So you maybe just have him leave after his contract's up. He'll go take another job. There were rumors of the Redskins earlier in this season being interested in Tomlin because of his son down there in Maryland, another historic franchise he could maybe have a challenge with. Okay. And then even training camp, that was kind of corroborated. He was a bit upset. I was there for this press conference when he got an extension, but it wasn't the 2-3 year deal that he's used to. It was the 1 more year to add on, and people asked him about it, and he didn't want to talk because he knew that was different. There was a little bit less rope to be tugging at because of the underachieving and the disappointments. However, that's not where things are this year, guys. It's a new year. It's a different day. It's a different season. Okay? This is a year that AB's been well gone. He's been several teams gone. His drama's elsewhere. Juju was the number 1, but never played like a number 1. That's a whole nother day. Juju might be the one player that has the most pressure on him next season in the whole NFL. Because if he's going to keep saying he's number 1, if teammates of his are going to say he's number 1, if fans are going to keep on saying on Twitter that he's a number 1 in the making, or he's already a number 1 after his last 2 years in the success of his rookie and sophomore season, he needs to prove it on the field and do it without AB there. It's easy to get those yards, or easier, when you have a Hall of Famer on the other side getting the double coverage. Now that that's not the case, Juju has been missing in action, whether he's been hurt, he's been banged up, getting hit more often, but also dropping key passes. He just flat out sucked this year. I think he'll tell you. He didn't get it done. He needs to prove himself to be that number 1. They never established number 2, and if you maybe say they did with Johnson, it wasn't until way at the end of the season, trying out Moncrief, James Washington, etc. Washington a little bit, but that didn't work out either. They're all better as 2s and 3s. They need Juju to step up. He didn't get it done. James Conner, injured like last year and like before, but missing even more time. Benny Snell stepping up late, but there was no semblance of a running game for most of the second half of the year. The defense did play better. Now, you got to give credit there. Minkah Fitzpatrick coming over. That trade, more than the present, is for the future as well, despite giving up the first rounder on a missed playoff year. All the interceptions, all the turnovers for touchdown. TJ Watt, for me, is the defensive player of the year in the entire NFL, despite the team missing the playoffs, for how well he played. The only Steeler ever defensively with 13-plus sacks in multiple seasons for the Steelers. Think of that for the defensive players that have played on this team through the history of this franchise. But tons of injuries. They had a coach pass away through training camp prior to the season. I was there for that, and that was just gut-wrenching. People even in the PR staff crying their eyes out, media members. I didn't know him personally, so I didn't feel it, but I could feel it around me. That's hard to obviously get over. And they had to hire a new coach and get a new system in there. Trying to learn Fichtner, and you can criticize him if you want, but that's new, and trying to learn the new ways there and figure things out there. That didn't really work out. He didn't do a great job. Is that on Tomlin? Should he have taken it over? Maybe. But I guess the point of it, and I didn't even get to this, 3 different quarterbacks started for the Steelers in a game, 2 of which are career backups, and I can tell you from past shows, you can just watch them through the channel, Pittsburgh Sports Live, SteelersNow.com, everywhere you want to go. It's there, Mic Drop section, Steelers Now here through the channel, that Devlin Hodges, it was a great Duck Mania story, but he's not the answer. He's not the future. He's a mediocre quarterback who didn't make mistakes early and then made mistakes, way too many of them late, and proved what I was prior saying. Mason Rudolph, a good, adequate backup at times. Then again, made way too many mistakes. He's far from the future. They don't have that guy on this team. And they had backup starting games. And despite all of that, they went 8-8. Many teams, you lose their starter, Aaron Rodgers goes down for the Packers, they got 4 wins. They're not going to go anywhere. Mike Tomlin, with 2 different backups and 3 different quarterbacks this overall season, managed a 500 8-8 season in which they were fighting for the playoffs all the way into the last game of the season. Yes, they should have beat the Niners when they converted 5 turnovers but didn't score points off those turnovers. However, that was before the defense really got going, and the Niners are a great team, top seed in the NFC. Yes, maybe they should have beat the Jets, absolutely. That would have allowed them to control their own destiny. But the Jets got better as the season went on. Maybe they should have beat Baltimore to make a statement there at the end of the season with RG3 at quarterback, but they probably quit on it and it just sucked. I mean, yes, they should have won some of these games. No excuses. They should have beat Baltimore, sure. But regardless, the overall record is 8-8. And it's with backup quarterbacks, injuries, and every obstacle imaginable, including an assistant coach and a friend of his dying right before the season. So with all that said, as much as I could understand maybe wanting to part ways with Tomlin and be done with the era because maybe you feel it's reached its expiration date or it's achieved its ultimate success, this isn't the time to say there's no excuses or to blame Tomlin and yell for him to be fired. Last year, sure. 2 years, sure, when they lose to Jacksonville in the divisional round at home. No good. That was unacceptable. Even years before. It would have made more sense then, despite the overall resume and the title. It doesn't make sense now at all. I can't even hear your argument. It makes less sense. Because 8-8 with that team, with everything the Steelers had to deal with, not too bad. It's why, months ago, and I admit I argued Tomlin Coach of the Year, it required him making the playoffs. He didn't. He won't win it. Harbaugh will probably win, and he deserves it for what he's doing with the Ravens, the top seed. But he has the MVP of the league and a great defense. That helps you. Tomlin's had a solid D, but tons of weapons being hurt on offense and backup QBs. And if you don't have a starting quarterback, if you have backup QBs, you normally can't go anywhere. He managed to go at least 8-8. So the point of this one is, at least as I wrap up the season here, kind of happy that it's finally over, is at the very least, I could see maybe a parting of the ways soon. I can hear you that he's underachieved in the past. But this is not the time to yell for Tomlin to be fired. It makes no sense. He actually did a little decent with not much to work with and all the obstacles and adversity of this season. I don't know many teams that would have went 8-8 with 2 different backup quarterbacks, all the injuries to every key position, and a damn assistant coach who died before the season. Think that, suck on that, and that's just the truth of it, okay? I hear you from the past. He did underachieve at times. But this is not the time to be yelling about Mike Tomlin being fired. And because I'm here at a home dining room setting, here studio, for any of you who happen to catch this, not even at the home studio, let alone the actual office here. It's kind of, we're on break, so I wanted to throw this in, but we're a little off kilter. I wanted to a little sip on the mule glass, as that's the tea of this Steelers season. Pinkies out. Once again, remind you to follow us here throughout the family of networks. Pittsburgh Sports Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now, Steelers Now, of course, Pittsburgh Soccer Now, and WV Sports Now, doing it big there, covering the Mountaineers and beyond down there in Morgantown in West Virginia. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. Hit us up on Facebook, Pittsburgh Sports Live there to search on Facebook. Find us on the channel. Click on the subscribe button here. Down on the video, down below the video there. Make it easier for us to get the content to you. And also follow me on Twitter at MikeAsti11. You can find this show at pghsportslive.com and also SteelersNow.com.